Well, 10 years in business, there's a lot to reflect upon. And the first reflection that I believe has had the greatest amount of impact for me in 10 years of business coaching came from a lady that I was attending a breakfast club with. And she gave me a CD series from a gentleman called Skip Ross. Now, this gentleman ran holiday camps or summer camps for children of 14 to 16 years old over in America and taught them success principles that he wished he knew when he was 14 or 15 years old. These success principles have stood true throughout, generations and generations. But what I loved about the uniqueness of what he talked about was in his dynamic living formula, which he created. And so the first reflection that I want you to be able to think about is that, how dynamic is the life that you're currently living? His definition is that a dynamic life is free of fear and full of joy and happiness all of the time. And to me, that was a pretty big call. I mean, I was driven by a lot of fear when I first went into business. Fear that I wouldn't be able to cover my living expenses. Fear of what other people would think about me. Fear that I'd let Kent down, my family, that I might be an embarrassment. What if I failed? So there were so many fears that I was constantly struggling with. And when it came to joy and happiness, well, going from a corporate career where you knew Friday nights was full of joy and happiness and the weekend, and then you knew to put your head down Monday to Friday, I found it a real juggling act to work out when I had clear boundaries that I had completed enough work in my week. And many business owners that I've worked with over the last 10 years have said that that is one of their major challenges. And I found that this formula really, really helped me to understand that I had indicators. The indicators were inside of me. And the first one was my talent. Was I using what I was talented at doing, or was I trying to get great at things that other people were more talented at? And we all know that in business we need to work with our strengths and we need to outsource our weaknesses. But in the beginning it isn't that easy, is it? Because for a lot of the beginning part of business, you have to wear all hats, all 7 hats in your business. And so you might not enjoy finance, but you need to understand financial key performance indicators. You might not be great at cold calling, but you need to generate enough sales to be able to achieve your dreams and goals. So for me, understanding my God-given equipment meant, my psychology training, doing profiling. And I got my hands on as many profiles as I possibly could to be able to understand not only my clients, but myself working with my clients. And in the coaching game, I guess, the talent was how present could you remain when you didn't know enough. You didn't know the answers, but you could sit in the stillness and ask a better question. And that was something that I really was dedicated to becoming great at. Think about what your talent is for your individual profession. What's the most important talent that you know that you have? So if you're a greenkeeper, you might be fabulous with soil and topsoil and getting the best results with cricket pitches or tennis courts. I met with a gentleman yesterday who said if it came down to confidence, I have 110% confidence in my ability. That's somebody who has huge amounts of talent in their area of expertise. But talent doesn't always equal joy and happiness and abundance in business. Would you agree? It's one step which Skip Ross talks about in his formula. We need to add that to the success principles that we know are proven. Now, Jack Canfield published a fantastic book, and I recommend that everybody have this book on their bookshelf. It's called The 64 Success Principles. And I guess for me, I just studied one a day for 64 days, and I put them up in the office and had the team reflect on them. We'd talk about them, and then we'd work out if we were actually applying those lessons as much as what we could be. And it was just something that was a daily discipline. You can put them on the back of the toilet door, you can put them, I've recorded all 64 on one sheet and laminated it and given it to all of our clients. And it's fabulous if you're feeling stuck at any time in business, you're not getting the results that you want. Have a look at these. And usually I'll identify 2 or 3 that clearly I haven't been using to my advantage, and it tends to, when I add that to my talent, to move me through a challenging place. And remember, this is what these reflections are about. If I could sum up working with all of the clients that I've worked with over 10 years, then a lot of the issues that they were having during their coaching session came down to one of these two things. They weren't working in their flow, like they weren't using their talents, they were getting stuck in things that they didn't enjoy. Or alternatively, they'd gone against the success principles that we know that remain true. And so if you think of yourself out of 10 and how effective you are in those two criteria, if you were to look at an average week, then what would you give yourself out of 10 for a performance in working in your talent? And out of 10, how much you're applying the success principles? But as you're aware with this formula, it's to the power of a proper self-image. And that's why I've chosen this as the number one biggest tip for anybody that's in business. Until I learned this principle, I didn't understand how far-reaching it would be in creating huge amounts of success with the people that I was working with, not just in my teams, but as clients, in my family, in every relationship that I had. Because you imagine every role that you partake in has a self-image. Okay, so we are, daughters, wives, mothers, friends, entrepreneurs, investors. We do a job every single day. So we have different roles that cross over, and each of those roles, you could place an indicator at any point in time of how you're feeling in that role. Now, when I first went into business, my self-image of myself as a business owner was 10 out of 10. And it very quickly crashed to -10 within my first day of training, my franchise training. I had no idea how much there was to learn, and how much, once you know something, it highlights just how much you don't know. And that learning curve for me continued for about 2 years, 100 weeks. And that's why we have 100 weeks to success. Now, it escalated back to 10, down to 2, sometimes sat at -1, sometimes +1. But I found that it greatly impacted my joy and happiness and my effectiveness in business. Because your proper self-image isn't just how you're feeling, it's the results that you're getting externally as well. And so when I work with people, firstly I'll ask them for them to give me their indicator. Where do they believe that they're sitting? And then we will track that over the first 6 or 7 weeks of coaching. How's your self-image? What's your motivation level? How are you feeling about what you're actually contributing, what you're doing? And I find that, the clients who can really be honest in this indication process can get the best results from a buddy or from a coach. Because if you're sitting at -1 and you start your 1 hour of coaching and you say to your buddy or your coach, no, I feel good, then that indicator is inauthentic. And what can lead to biggest problems, I guess, and until I really understood this, I would assume that the customer knew best and they were telling me the truth, and I would plow on with, great, well this week what I'm going to teach you is this success principle, we're going to focus on here in your talent, we're going to get you working on this, and we'd work on those other 2 areas, and anything multiplied to the power of -1 goes backwards. And the biggest challenge that I was having was a feeling of frustration. A frustration that, I wasn't serving that person as well as I could have. I had team members that, were saying, I just don't know enough, so I'd record it all, I would train them, and we weren't getting any results, or we weren't getting any activity that was happening. And it wasn't until I really drilled down on this aspect that I recognised that if somebody's identity is challenged, there is no point teaching any new success principles. There's not even any reason to look at their activity level. We need to work on who they're being and get their self-image higher than their doubt. And even if, as a goal, we had, as a community of leisure seekers, that we left people with a higher self-image than when we found them. If that was all our intention was, so anyone we employed, when we sat with them and connected with them, that they might be at 1 and we got them to 3. or they're at 6 and we get them to 7. And we allow people to experience a feeling of empowerment and recognition and significance, and allowing each other to be able to be authentic. And that's why we say welcome home. When people come into our community, it's like a home energetic situation. We're not looking for a networking function where you have to put on your bright shiny mask and step in and tell everyone that the world is fantastic and business is going great, because to be honest, that doesn't generally float with people that are further ahead on this journey with you anyway. They just listen, nod and say, interesting, okay, let's find out how they go in this next quarter. And so what I want you to reflect on is for yourself as an entrepreneur, as a healthy, enlightened entrepreneur. Where are you currently? Where is your indicator right now in terms of your proper self-image? Do you see yourself as one of the healthy, enlightened millionaires? In your activities every single day around health, what are you actually moving towards? Okay, so, for me, I would constantly catch myself believing that I wanted to be healthy, but eating on the run, or not eating, or not resting properly, or thinking that if I just did the work and I checked everything off my list, that it wouldn't matter if I put lunch off for 1 or 2 hours, if I forgot to drink my water, if I didn't exercise, for more than 2 days in a row, that it wouldn't affect me. And yet what I found was my self-image as a healthy person was quite high, but my actions were very low, so it wasn't congruent. The proper self-image I should have had was probably 2 out of 10. And it's the same in business. If somebody's looking on what you're doing every single week, what would they give you as a score? And so if you're giving yourself heightened indicators compared to what you believe an outsider would give you, then we need to align those and find out what the ballpark is that you're playing on, and then understand that it is just something that's going to move and change constantly as we go throughout our journey. And so I guess, a dynamic life, one full of joy and happiness all of the time, sounds fantastic. And for me, it was a bit of a pipe dream until I realised that this process actually works. Sitting down, taking 4 hours every quarter to actually define for my life what is joy and happiness. In the simple things, walking my kids to school, being able to host play dates, being able to sit and do reading in the grade 1 class. Very, very basic things. Go to the beach once a week. Experience a date night once a month. They weren't massive things for the average person. They would look at them and say, okay, well, that's no big deal, you can achieve that. And yet, why was I holding my life back? Why was I sabotaging what my joy and happiness was, thinking that it was too selfish? When in actuality, when I look back and realise as soon as I allowed myself to move forward in these areas, as soon as I defined success in all of my roles and I started to living up to that level of success, I became more congruent, I became more empowered, and I became so much more joy-filled and happy. And we talked about a new word that we could create in Leisure Seekers, because fun's overused. We think happiness is overused. And so it was interesting. We were sitting around as a team and doing a culture day, and we were laughing at, these Gen Ys that make up new words and saying, what would fuppiness mean? If we had fun and happiness, we could have fuppiness. What's our fuppiness level? And so I really want to close this reflection off for you to think, how is life travelling for you? Can you laugh at yourself? Are you having a great time, or is it really challenging? And if it's really challenging, then just take a moment to think in your mind, what would I score myself out of 10 in each of these 3 areas? What is my proper self-image currently for the role that I'm thinking about right now? How many success principles, what am I applying, and where's my talent? And you'll get a pretty good idea of what your threshold is and what you can handle before that fuppiness level drops below where it needs to be and we need to pick it up. So I hope that that's really helped to highlight that first point and remind those of you that needed reminding, and look forward to connecting with you soon.